Good to be on.
Let's start with the latest jobs numbers that are out Friday. The economy added 162,000 jobs in July. Unemployment dropped to 7.4%, the lowest in 4.5 years. Factory production, home construction, and auto sales are all up. The July numbers are a bit disappointing, but overall, if you look over the last year, unemployment has gone from 8.1% to 7.4%. Isn't the overall trend positive?
Well, Chris, for those who have found a job and gotten full-time work, I think all of us are happy for those people, and we want more of that to take place. I think if you get into the details of the numbers, what we're seeing, though, is unequivocally the majority of the new jobs that have been created, at least last year, were part-time jobs, not full-time jobs. And we've also seen the labor participation rate, the number of people who actually are still in the market for jobs, go down, which means there are an awful lot of Americans who've frankly given up. And that's really, I think, what's so critical right now is that we focus on seeing how we can fundamentally get this economy growing again so that people can find full-time jobs and we can take away the impediments of job creation like Obamacare and some of the red tape and regulation coming out of this town.
Okay, you talk about creating jobs, you talk about growing the economy, but you have spent the last week in the House working on and passing your agenda, a series of bills called Stop Government Abuse. Included in the bills, and let's put it up on the screen, block the IRS from enforcing Obamacare, place limits on taxpayer-funded conferences, require Congress to approve new regulations that cost more than $100 million. Here's what Democratic Congressman Elijah Cummings had to say about the way you've spent the last week.
Republicans are more interested in playing partisan games and advancing political messaging bills. Americans want Congress to focus on creating jobs and growing our economy.
Is what you've been doing the best way to spend Congress's time when you're about to go on a recess for 5 full weeks?
Well, first of all, Chris, government doesn't create jobs. The private sector does. And what we have going on today is a real erosion of the confidence on behalf of the American public in terms of their trust in government and, frankly, the faith in their economy. And the kinds of bills that we brought to the floor this week, you mentioned the REINS Act. That was the bill that said, you know what, stop the bureaucrats from passing these massive regulations that are impeding the ability for our businesses to grow. Let's think about the people out there that actually are out of work because they don't have the proper skills and training. Stop burdening our economy. That's what the purpose of these bills were this week, Chris. And the problem is we don't get a lot of bipartisan support. We passed a bill that said bureaucrats shouldn't be allowed to give excessive bonuses right now. People ought to know that their taxpayer dollars are being spent wisely. These are the kinds of things that can rebuild the confidence. Long-term progress in America, growth in our economy is dependent on that.
But, Congressman, rightly or wrongly, none of these bills that you passed is going to become law. Your own members say they're not going to pass the Senate, the president won't sign them. Let's talk reality. You haven't passed a farm bill. You've only passed 4 of the 12 appropriations bills you're supposed to pass. We face a government shutdown and a debt limit in the fall. Again, is this the best way to spend your time passing bills that aren't going to become law? And an added question, with so much unfinished business, why not stick around instead of taking a 5-week vacation?
Well, let me try and address those. I mean, first of all, you've got the president now out giving campaign speeches again as if we're in the middle of the presidential election again. These speeches that he's been given over the last 2 weeks have nothing new in them. In fact, he's engaging in the blame game. And when it is easy for the president to get some progress going here now, he talks about job creation. We in the House, we've passed a bill that speaks to the fact that they're unemployed workers because they don't have the right skills necessary. The president could pick up the phone and tell Harry Reid to bring that bill right up. We pass a number of energy bills in the House that go towards trying to relieve the consumers out there who are in the middle of the summer driving season of the increasing price at the pump. Is the president joining us and encouraging the Senate to bring it up?
Congressman, I raised exactly the same issues with Treasury Secretary Jack Lew last week, and I said, you keep talking, the administration, about how pointless, what a waste of time it is to keep repealing Obamacare. by the Republicans when it's not going to happen, and yet they're making a bunch of proposals that also aren't going to happen. But you could tend to your own knitting. You could pass a farm bill. You could take care. You have the power of the purse. Only 4 of the 12 appropriations bills have you even passed. Why not do what the House is supposed to do?
Let me continue to address the list of items that you put forward. One, on the farm bill, we have passed a farm bill. Okay, we in the House, what we did is we said, you know, we're going to bust up the almost 50-year custom where you're going to marry up 2 different issues and force people to vote on those. We passed a farm bill.
But you took out all of the food stamps, which is the only way for 40 years that you've been able to get a deal.
No, that is not true, not on a Republican majority. And so Republican majority for the first time says, we don't like the way things have always been done in Washington. That's exactly what we're trying to change. And we're going to bring a bill forward under Chairman Lucas's leadership that actually says about food stamps, we want the people who need those food stamp benefits to get them. But you know what? It's an issue of fairness. If they're able-bodied people who can work, they ought to do that in order to receive a government benefit. That's the proposal we're bringing forward. You talk about appropriations bills? Yeah, we passed 4 in the House. The Senate has passed 0, right? And the fact is the House of Representatives has been the only one focused on trying to get a handle on our fiscal problem.
Let me bring up an appropriations bill, because this week you had to pull the transportation and housing bill because you couldn't get enough Republicans to vote for it, to support it. Afterwards, the House Appropriations Chairman, Harold Rogers, said this, put it up on the screen: I believe that the House has made its choice. Sequestration and its unrealistic and ill-conceived discretionary cuts must be brought to an end. Question: are you willing, when you get this from the chairman of House Appropriations, a conservative Republican, are you willing to give? Are you willing to compromise on the $109 billion in automatic sequestration cuts starting in October?
Here's the problem. What we need to have happen is leadership on the part of this president of the White House to come to the table finally and say, we're going to fix the underlying problem that's driving our deficit. We know that is the entitlement programs and the unfunded liability that they are leaving on this generation and the next.
So you're saying if you could get a compromise on entitlements, then you would give up on the sequestration?
What we have always said in the House as Republicans, leadership and members alike, is that we want to fix the real problem. The real problem is entitlements. We've always said sequester is not the best way to go about spending reduction. It was, as you know, a default mechanism because Congress couldn't do the job it was supposed to a couple years ago. We've always said that. But
so
in fact,
to give up on sequestration?
But in fact, Chris, we've always said, President, come join us. But the House really is the only one who has consistently engaged in trying to address the spending problem. And this fall is going to give us a great opportunity, I think, to all come together and try and tackle the real problem, which is the entitlements.
Well, let's talk about that, because when you come back from your 5-week recess, you have only 9 legislative days until the end of September when the government runs out of money. Funding shuts down. First of all, do you support a short-term extension, a continuing resolution to give you more time to work out a deal? And what's the basis for a real deal to fund the government and to raise the debt limit?
Well, yes, I think that most conservatives, most on the left, Republicans, Democrats alike say we shouldn't be for a government shutdown. What we're trying to do is fund the government and to make sure also that we take away the kinds of things that are standing in the way of a growing economy, of better health care, and all the while keeping our eye focused on trying to deal with the ultimate problem, which is this growing deficit. And that means when we get to the issue of the debt ceiling, it's not some sort of fictional process or just a process that we go through. What raising the debt limit means, it's increasing your credit limit. And for too long now, Washington has disregarded the fact that what that does is it burdens our kids and theirs. And we actually are digging the hole deeper for the next generation.
But Congressman, the president, I'm not saying who's right or who's wrong, but the president wants higher taxes and more spending. You want lower taxes and less spending. The president says, clean debt limit, just give me the increase in the debt limit, and you, the Republicans, the Boehner rules say no increase in the debt limit without an equal or greater cut in spending. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. aren't we headed for a train wreck?
Now, I hope now that we have learned through the process that we can actually find some common ground between the two sides.
Where's the common ground?
Well, I can tell you one thing. Last week, Chris, in the House, what we did is we codified the president's delay of the Obamacare employer mandate. And we also said it's only fair to extend that delay of a mandate to individuals and working people as well.
But he opposes that.
We had 22 members of his party in the House join us. And in fact, what we also saw that week were 3 national Democratic union leaders speak out on Obamacare as well. And they said that this law is already creating nightmare scenarios to working people in this country. Because as we know, and this union letter specified this, that Obamacare is turning our economy into a part-time economy.
Again, if I may, sir. Aren't
we have common ground.
Again, I'm not saying, well, but you don't have common ground with the president, and you don't have common ground with the Senate Republican leadership. I'm not saying you should cave. I asked Jack Lew last week, you know, short of surrender, what are you asking for from them? Aren't we headed for a train wreck?
I hope not, because I think that we are earnest in our desire to fix these problems, and we believe there is common ground in trying to say all of us know you got to do something about the entitlements. The biggest growing entitlement before us right now has to do with health care. We can do something. The president's already given on Obamacare. He's already conceded that it's flawed and the employer mandate shouldn't be put into effect. Let's do the same for individuals. Let's say it's only fair not to burden them with the taxes and the mandate.